Hello, thanks for checking out What If New Mexico, a podcast exploring multiple angles and possibilities for people living with a disability in New Mexico. Every episode unravels different experiences to guide a conversation about inclusivity and diversity in the land of enchantment. We ask, what if it is possible to include everyone in all aspects of life? Each episode will share real conversations with people living with a disability in different communities across our state. We'll stir up dialogue to inspire a future of New Mexico that includes everyone. Join us every Friday for a new episode.
Hi, it's What If New Mexico. I'm Jennifer.
And I'm Star.
And we're here to imagine what if we truly tried to acknowledge our unique needs in learning and work environments, all the way to social interaction. What if we respected everyone, regardless of their physical and or mental ability? So disability is probably not the main category you think of in today's social justice movement, which is dominated more by ethnicity, color, and gender. It's even left out sometimes because people tend to look at it as a health or education issue and not a justice issue.
In this episode, we are looking at disability from the perspective of civil rights. Also, we're asking if we can be allies to people who are marginalized for other reasons. I wanted to start with a story of a theater group that I attended once, which was intended to serve autistic people. The leader had set up the program with a 1-to-1 ratio of autistic and non-disabled participants. The non-disabled ones were paid and they participated in planning. I had more experience in theater than some of the paid people, but I was on the lower level because I had the label. Now, one of my interests was a type of theater called theater of the oppressed, and I brought that up with the leader. I remember him looking at me with the most confused expression. He said, "What does oppression have to do with it?" He had set up a model system of oppression that was designed to subvert any way for disabled people to have a voice by having that two-tiered system. But he himself was so embedded in it that he couldn't understand what he was doing. So in his mind, we were sick and he was helping us get better. So he was very stuck in that medical lens.
So can you tell me like in so many words, his actions, how does that fit into a system of oppression as a bigger picture?
So it was a small group of people that were that were put into two tiers. One tier was disempowered through various means by not being paid, not being given any chance for input, and being isolated from each other, which is the same thing that happens, for any type of oppression. That's what happens on the large scale with racial oppression and other things in this world.
What was his theory, or why did he do that to you guys? Like, it just is like obviously weird.
Well, I think on this consciously, I feel like he was probably thinking that disabled people don't know, are like children, and they need to be taught. So they don't know anything. So they're using the non-disabled people as models that we were supposed to follow. But I think subconsciously, he may have also been afraid that we might say something that disrupts his point of view or the structure. Like we might try to rise up and have more input. It's remarkable how many places I go and people are talking about autistic people in particular, but we're not at the table talking.
Let's hear from two people who have more than one thing they get marginalized for.
I came out of the closet. It made me feel great because they were gay and I'm gay. So it's like, hey, I fit in. I don't have to hide. My brothers actually knew it. One of my brothers knew I was gay. But he said, don't say anything to your mom or she'll disown you. Because I think the more the gay right community is out there, people can understand, oh, there's gay folks and everything, and they're not hiding, or lesbians folks. They're not hiding anymore. They're coming out of the woodwork. Because I don't think people understand us. They put like a cover over us and says, that person doesn't know, that person's weird, or that person doesn't know what they're talking about.
It's really hard, especially with somebody like myself who is a lesbian and does have a disability. It's really hard for, I want to say, family to accept, and some friends, because with disability, you're not accepted as a lesbian. They more or less see you with your disability. They more or less see your disability than what you are. There's been numerous experiences where I would just cry because I heard that all through my life, and it's like, it's a record. It's planted in. It's more like planted in your brain, and you hear that constantly.
I think some of us can develop compassion for other types of oppression if we felt it ourselves. Like, I'm white, but I could somewhat understand some racial oppression because I've been marginalized on account of disability, as an example.
Actually, to piggyback on that, there was a large portion of my time where I did not consider myself disabled. And it wasn't until I entered the disabled community was I able to look at bigger pictures.
So we can really generalize our experiences to see how oppression works in the whole world about all types of things.
Well, you told me earlier, you can't solve the problem of one oppression unless we solve all forms of oppression.
Yeah.
It's basically, when I disclosed to some people, it was, oh, okay, you're living with this. However, at least you're not like that. And it would always be some comparison that made me feel really uncomfortable because...
Yeah, in the autism world is full of that, where there's people who are like, I'm this type of autistic or Asperger's, but at least I'm not like that. I'm not intellectually disabled. They will sort of go out of their way to have the group identity with a group that then is marginalizing another group. So it's not always working. That the compassion, too much group identity really gets in the way, I think, of having the compassion for everyone to be included. I think disabled people sometimes are assumed to just be people who receive services, but who can't also be of service to others. And that viewpoint may come from this oppression mindset that we're talking about. So let's listen to some people who stood up for and advocated for others.
For 30 years now, my feeling is that I am not accepted in my own community at this point because I am trying to get ahead and work my brain so that I can bring my community up, because I'm on a mission here. And the mission is to improve quality of life for myself and for others that aren't just brain injured, but that are in my brain injury community.
Well, I tell them in Spanish because for my family, I can't tell them in English. I have to talk to them in Spanish. So I tell them, you don't mind if I talk Spanish, right?
No.
Van a respetar a mí y a mi hermana porque esto es nuestro vida y y así son. Y si no me respeta a mí, tú no estás en mi familia. Sometimes I would sit by myself to eat lunch, but she would come and she would sit next to me and have lunch with me. Or if I can't find my classroom, she would go and help me find my classroom.
Yeah. Well, I think it's, more different for, like my husband, because of the fact that he is partially blind and, he also has a lot of brain activity. So, he, when people are first around him, he could talk really fast and a whole bunch of stuff comes out and, people kind of are taken back by that. And, so we kind of coach each other, you know, say, hey, honey, was that before 1980? And he'll go, oh, yeah, honey, it was. And so, he coaches me if I feel lost about something that somebody's talking about. And then I'll coach him to like slow it down. Or I'll say, honey, you're machine gunning him with the information. So just that, having someone to kind of give you a little bit of coaching along the way, I think helps when you're interacting with people. And
So what does it mean to be an ally? Vashad told us what's important about being an ally.
I am an ally, and I show and people should show allyship to just anybody can show allyship to just by showing trust, so trust and showing integrity of who you are, and just having not somebody just think that you are betraying them because they don't trust you. So because integrity is very important. Integrity, and trusting. Sometimes trusting, is very important. Integrity is your reputation in life.
Era also echoed the themes of listening and integrity.
Listening is a big piece of that. Listening to others helps you to recognize what struggles are happening and to listen to what is being asked for in support. More so, honestly, I've learned to be an ally from Black educators, honestly, and Black and Indigenous and people of color that who educate on social justice, who are educators and authors. My own experience has taught me some things, but being able to listen to others' experiences has really taught me a lot about what it means to be allyship, to do. Spent time in intentional communities where doing some work trade. And then I started to realize some things that I was focusing a lot on autistic advocacy previously. And, and then I realized, well, how much have I really been listening to others that are different than me? I was getting so discouraged that people weren't hearing me, but had to admit that I wasn't hearing others either. And I'm still learning. There's a lot of, things that I'm still learning. It's a lifelong process to undo our colonization of our minds and bodies and society and ways of being.
So that term decolonization, I think, is a fairly vague academic term that not everybody agrees what it means. But the way I basically understand it is that it comes from like the history of global colonization with white supremacy and that kind of mindset applied to everything. So in other words, if you've got a colonializing mindset, you just think of levels of people oppressing each other as sort of the norm. And that can come out in just the way schools work and the way the racism in our country today works and so on. And I think when people say they're an ally, sometimes that is a red flag just in itself, especially the louder they proclaim that they're an ally. it usually is part of that, colonial mindset. They're making it about them. They're like, I'm an ally, which makes them more centered. And so I think some of the best allies never even use that word.
Even in groups such as the medical community, who could easily be allies for people living with disabilities. But just because you're treating someone doesn't actually mean it's allyship. Sometimes it's, I know what's best for you and you listen to me, but I'm doing the best for you.
Exactly, yeah. Helping is not always being with, in other words.
So let's turn to a group called Allies for Advocacy and how they are looking to bridge the divide between mental health advocacy and disability advocacy. Those two worlds, though related, are not always allies for each other.
You mean to getting the two parties to work together? I'm Carol's daughter-in-law. Her son was my husband, and he had autism, and he also had some mental health issues. He was doing okay when we were living here, and he was getting developmental disability supports. And then we moved to Boston, and the developmental disability supports weren't there, and he fell into the mental health system, and he got stuck. He went to the hospital, I think it was 30 times in a year or something. They didn't understand developmental disabilities. They didn't know how to treat him. So they'd give him a label and they'd send him off with new medications, and he'd come back 3 days later being like, I can't do this. And they just didn't get it. They didn't understand that he was asking for help in ways that they were not able to understand. And so after he died, which he died from maltreatment in the state hospital in New Mexico, Carol and I both picked up where he left off and really tried to make a difference in the mental health and developmental disability community about people living with both needs. We're continuing John's work. And it was his inspiration that brought us to the point where we realized that something needs to change. We need to really look at this topic as a team and not just be like, oh, the psychiatrist says this, so it must be this way. The incident that happened was his death. But we've really been able to come together, and I think we're making a difference.
I think that, for example, autism is regarded as a developmental disability. And when a person with autism is diagnosed or comes into the mental health system, they're going to communicate differently than people with who are coming from a different place. Unless you're attuned to that, and people in the mental health field are not, they just they're very dismissive. They don't know how to listen. They are very judgmental within the limits of their training. I mean, they are trained to see a report of oral hallucinations as, for example, something that needs to be diagnosed as schizophrenia. Whereas a person with autism, this may be their ongoing dialogue. It doesn't need that diagnosis. And so there's a conflict between the two systems. She talks about when my son died, he died because he was given 3 medications, 2 of which were for diagnoses he did not have. One was for schizophrenia and one was for OCD. He didn't have those things. It's typical of autism to have rigid thinking, for example, too, or to cling to routines. But the mental health community sees this and thinks that must be OCD, and medicate that. There's not a pill for autism. When he was in another state, when he was in Massachusetts, they have such an enormous system that they actually would have hospitals with special units for people with developmental disabilities. But they wouldn't put him in those because they said, oh, but he's too high functioning. Well, no. He's articulate, but in a different way than indicates capacity. So we have really struggled with this for a number of years, and really would like to see some changes made in the credentialing for direct support professionals in the mental health system.
Vishad had some more to say about the spiritual side of learning to listen and accept others.
Nobody is bad or evil. No thing so we're all good. Someone can be misguided and just just don't know how to be good. It doesn't mean that they're not good. And that's what I'm working on right now, is to see both ends of the coin, to seeing good people and bad people as good people. But I became in that conscious, of seeing us always as good people. And that's when life changed. And it changed, by applying the different spirituality teachings, So I went through a lot of trials and errors of marginalization, definitely, because not marginalizing somebody else, and just seeing all of us as who we are, accepting as who we are.
So, Jen, let's talk about how can we become the best allies?
That's a great question. There's a feeling that if I speak out a lot, or if I, if I speak out a lot, I'm an ally. But is that actually the most helpful way to be an ally?
Mm-hmm. Allies that I appreciate the most are they're listening instead of talking. So for disability circles, I would like all of the professionals to just sort of be quiet and listen to us. And that would be better allyship, so that we can, as disabled people, organize ourselves more. And then I think that translates for like a group of Native people, for example. If I want to support Native things, I basically don't do anything. Like, I don't insert myself into it. I just listen and make sure that I'm not being biased, but that I'm letting them do whatever. What do you think?
I think what we covered is important because it begins a conversation about how to create respectful and peaceful experiences for everybody in the community, not just able-bodied people. So what it means to be an ally is to basically stop and listen. Guess what? I have to learn how to listen better as well. So, what if the communities of New Mexico took a step to be conscientious about judgments? What if we didn't rely on stereotypes to react to people who look, speak, and act differently than ourselves? What if we were more aware of each other's needs because we had safe ways to speak about them? What if we didn't operate in a disability-first world and everyone had an option to at least just be human to one another? Sounds like heaven, but what if? Let's keep the conversation going. Thanks for listening to episode 6 of What If, New Mexico? This has been an intriguing and enjoyable experience. I want to thank my colleague Star Ford because her skills were absolutely necessary to complete these episodes. We'd like to hear your thoughts. Please email whatifnewmexico@gmail.com. That is whatifnewmexico@gmail.com. There are no spaces. What other topic should we cover? Do you have a story idea to pitch? We're looking for stories regarding how we cruise through life, making it just like everyone else. I would like to hear from families, friends, partners, workers, job places, on how they're responding to disability in their communities every day. Peace.